everyone, either welcome back or welcome to my channel. And in today's video, I want to talk about the concept of invisible illnesses. So before I get into any more details, time for the intro. Back in 2018, I was diagnosed with IIH. IIH is short for idiopathic intracranial hypertension. In short, in IIH, there's an increased intracranial pressure without a known cause. IIH is known by two older names, pseudotumor cerebri and benign intracranial hypertension. Living with IIH is very hard to explain to others, as it can be hard to tell when I'm not feeling well. My hope is that through these videos we can learn together and help make relationships better through a better understanding. I also hope to provide people living with IIH a community so they never feel like they are alone with this condition. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell down below so that you get updated about further videos. I upload new content every Monday and Thursday afternoon. Part of my job is to tell you what a chronic illness is and what an invisible illness is, because IIH actually fits into both of these categories. So chronic illness, again, just means that you're dealing with it for a significant period of time. An invisible illness is one that is not actually physically visible to those who actually look at you. So when you look at me, it's not very obvious that I'm actually sick. You might be able to tell when I'm not feeling well if you're around me enough and can tell when I'm having a significant amount of symptoms compared to when I'm not experiencing a lot of symptoms at all. Today I want to specifically focus on invisible illnesses. There's actually a lot of invisible illnesses out there, so like anything that is not physically visible to the world. Basically, if it's not obvious that somebody has a chronic condition or a physical ailment, then their illness is considered invisible. It's not physically visible to those around them unless you physically tell somebody that you're experiencing symptoms. Now, I think that IIH really fits this well because our main symptoms are headaches, and headaches are so subjective to experience as it is. Invisible illnesses really are unique in a way because you often get some type of surprise when you tell somebody that you're not actually feeling very good or that you've been going through a chronic illness on top of it. So with IIH, when I tell people they don't really know how to respond, and that's okay. But when I tell people that I have IIH, it's like, oh, you're going through that, all that, you look so good, like you look so healthy. And actually, I really want to emphasize this to people who don't have these illnesses. Please stop doing this. People think this is a compliment when they tell us that we look good, but most of us don't feel this way about it. I will eventually cover why on my channel in a video later on. Another big reason it's important for me to talk about invisible illnesses is because society doesn't really acknowledge invisible illnesses very well. So if you appear to look healthy, you should be able to do everything that healthy people can do. Invisible illnesses are really hard to communicate, particularly to those around us. Close family members often think you're faking at some point because their brains will put together that in a way that, oh, well, now you're not feeling well? Of course you're not, because this is just the perfect pattern. Please don't do this either. We are pretty much always dealing with a baseline of symptoms underneath what we're actually willing to show. And at some point, we get tired of complaining. So the best way to move forward with this is to understand that even when someone with an invisible and or chronic illness isn't complaining, it doesn't mean it's gone away. It just means that we're either sick of complaining or we're at a baseline enough that it feels like we don't have any symptoms, so we're not complaining. If you see somebody generally complaining that has chronic illness, deals with chronic pain, it probably means that that person, and particularly me, is having a significant increase in the pain. So for example, I always say my baseline is between about a 3 and a 4 usually on the pain scale, 3 to 4. It varies depending on the day, but usually sits about 3 to 4. And then during my worst symptoms, it can go up to a 7, 8. So there's a significant increase in the amount of pain that I'm experiencing, and it's much harder for me to ignore. So I pretty much am at the point where I have to acknowledge it. It may not even look like at that point that that person is really struggling, but if that person is complaining, it generally means that they are struggling to a certain degree, because if we complained all the time when we had a little bit of aches and pains, nothing would ever get done. It would be a very, very hard life to live. And getting into that situation too, if you see us laughing or joking or whatever, usually that's an indication, especially for me, after I've had a cold or something, that I'm starting to feel better, is when I start joking around and all of that. But in the case of my chronic illness, I use humor actually as a coping mechanism. So I honestly believe the more I laugh and the more I enjoy myself, the easier I am going to have to be able to overcome any issues. And it's a great distraction too. So I often use humor as a coping mechanism. So when I'm making jokes, it's generally not an easy way to tell that I'm not feeling well. I'll generally try and laugh just to make myself feel better, kind of thing. And that's why I watch and listen to the things that I do on a daily basis, because I like to laugh a little bit each day, because it's a great distraction. Even if the person is doing things that they normally do post chronic illness diagnosis when they're feeling normal, it could just mean that they're wanting to feel as close to normal as they can and participate. As I've said before, we hate missing out on things, we hate having to say no, we don't like when we have to cancel on people, but I think that people need to understand what happens when we overdo it. I've done videos. The video I did on that was pretty old, so I may redo a different video upon that particular issue, because I think it's really important. And I actually just had it happen yesterday from doing something on Thursday that I should have known when to stop. But I almost always overdo it, because now my symptoms are extremely unpredictable, so it's really, really hard for me to know when I'm gonna have a day that I can do that same thing again. It's really not easy to tell if someone is having a bad day. My best piece of advice with this is just ask them. I really don't honestly like when people ask how I'm doing, but if you can do it in a way that isn't just "how are you," in the way that people do small talk, I think that it's a little bit easier for me to accept that, oh, okay, you are really interested in how I'm actually doing. Because when you just say, oh, hi, how are you, kind of thing, it makes it sound like you don't really want to know. And that's a common thing that people do with small talk. So just be careful with that. It's a fine line. I know I'm picky about it. In conclusion, an invisible illness is just an illness that isn't physically visible to those people around us. So it's really, really important that you understand that it does exist, but that it's not physically visible. So it's not easily shown when that person isn't feeling well. I think another piece of advice I have for people, especially with these videos, is the fact that I may like it a certain way, but it's best to ask the person that you're around all the time as to how they want to have these subjects approached. These are just in particular the way I like to have them approached, but other people are obviously going to be different. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. And as for now, that's it for today. Bye, everyone.